I never thought I'd end up here, sitting on my couch, staring at a pile of her sweaters, feeling like I was slapped in the face with a cold, wet towel. Her scent still clings to the fabric, but it's just a cruel reminder now. I can't believe I missed all the signs, or maybe I just didn't want to see them. The last few months have been a bloody mess. She was pregnant, our first kid, and I was supposed to be the proud, supportive husband. Instead, I was just a ghost in our house, pretending everything was fine. That's what I was good at, after all, pretending. But now I see it for what it was, a carefully constructed lie. It all started with small things. I remember her phone buzzing late at night, her cheeks flushing when she answered. She'd slip into the bathroom and I'd hear her muffled voice. I brushed it off, told myself she was just talking to her sister or a friend, but the feeling inside my gut kept twisting tighter. Something wasn't adding up. Then came the missed calls, the quick glances at her phone whenever I looked her way. She'd hide it in her purse or shove it face down on the table. That's when I started noticing the little things, her hesitation when I hugged her, the way she'd avoid my eyes when I caught her staring at her phone screen. Honestly, I felt like a damn fool for ignoring it all. One night I decided to follow her. It was late, around 11 p.m., and she slipped out of bed with her phone in hand. I kept a safe distance, watching her tiptoe toward the front door. She looked over her shoulder, her face tight and sweaty. My stomach sank. That's when I saw her open her purse and slip out a small, folded paper. I couldn't see exactly what it was, but it looked suspicious. I waited a beat, then quietly followed her outside. She was heading toward the neighbor's house, Mark's place. My heart hammered like a drum in my chest. I saw her slip into his driveway, her heels clicking on the pavement. The worst part, they didn't even bother to hide it. No shame, no guilt. Just her and him, a secret we'd been living with. I stood there frozen, my palms slick with sweat, watching her kiss him goodbye. My brain was numb, my fists clenched so tight they ached. When she got back inside, she looked around quickly, her eyes darting to the window. I wanted to scream, to tear her apart. Instead, I kept my cool and went to bed, pretending I hadn't seen a thing. That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. The signs had been there, they'd been whispering, then shouting. But I'd been too busy convincing myself she was exhausted or stressed or just busy with pregnancy. Now I see how stupid I was. The next day I found her phone on the kitchen table. It was open to a text thread, her and Mark, sharing inside jokes, plans, and eventually words that made my stomach turn. She'd been sneaking around, lying through her teeth, and I had no idea. Reading those messages was like taking a punch in the gut. I could almost feel her breath on my neck as I scrolled through her betrayal. I felt sick. My hands were trembling and my vision blurred with rage. How could she do this? During her pregnancy, our child's very life growing inside her. Every promise she made, every word of love felt like a cruel game I was never meant to win. I wanted to confront her then and there, but I knew I had to plan carefully. I couldn't just blow up and scream at her. No, I needed a plan, something cold, precise, and unstoppable. I wanted her to feel everything I felt: betrayed, humiliated, and finally broken. Because lying and cheating during pregnancy, that's not just betrayal, that's a crime in my eyes. And so I sat down, took a deep breath, and started to plot. I had to be smart. She thought she was clever, slipping around, hiding her tracks, but I had enough now. She'd push me to the edge, and I'd be damned if I let her get away with it. The game was just beginning, and I planned to win by any means necessary. I spent the next few days gathering evidence. I didn't want to do anything rash, but I knew I had to be thorough. I started with her phone, installing a tracker app I found online, discreet and supposed to be untraceable. It was weird, knowing I was spying on her, but honestly I didn't care anymore. She crossed a line, and I needed concrete proof to back my accusations. Every time I saw her touch her phone or whisper to someone, I felt that familiar surge of anger. I could practically feel the heat rising in my chest, like my blood was boiling just beneath the skin. I was careful not to make it obvious. I didn't want her to catch on. Still, I kept a close eye on her movements, and the evidence started piling up. One afternoon, I was in the living room, pretending to be busy with some work on my laptop. She came in carrying a small bag, probably her purse, and hesitated. I saw her glance at the hallway, then her hand subtly clutched the bag tighter. I kept my eyes on my screen, but my ears perked up. That's when I heard her whispering into her phone and I caught a snippet of her saying, "Tonight's perfect. No one will suspect a thing." My stomach twisted again. She was planning something, I was sure of it. I wanted to confront her then and there, but I knew better. Patience was key. I needed more proof. The following evening, I decided to check her email. I knew she'd been sneaking around, but I wasn't sure how deep it went. I created a fake account, hacked into her email, and found a treasure trove of messages, more plans, more lies. I saw photos she'd sent Mark, close-up shots, flirtatious messages, and even a tentative plan to meet that night at his place. What made me see red was the date on the message. The same night I'd been working late at the office, feeling proud that I was earning for our future. Instead of working, she was with him, sneaking around during what was supposed to be the best time of our lives. That's when I knew I had enough. I printed everything, screenshots, messages, photos, and put it all in a folder. I didn't want to just confront her. I wanted to make her see everything, every lie, every broken promise, every betrayal. But I also knew I had to be strategic. I didn't want her to destroy the evidence, hide it, or delete it. I had to act quickly. I decided I'd wait until she came home, then surprise her with the evidence. I'd show her that I knew her secrets, that I'd uncovered everything, and that she couldn't run from it anymore. That night she came in late, smelling of perfume and something else, something smoky and sweet. Her eyes darted around like a thief caught in the act. I was already waiting, holding the folder in my hand. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" I asked, voice cold as ice. The words felt heavy on my tongue. Her face drained of color. She stammered, trying to deny it, but the evidence was right there in front of her. Screenshots, messages, proof that she'd betrayed me during the most vulnerable time of our lives. She froze, her lips trembling. "It's not what you think." "Oh, I think it's exactly what I think," I snapped. "You've been lying to me, cheating on me, sneaking around with your boss during your pregnancy. Do you even realize how disgusting that is?" She looked away, tears pooling in her eyes, but I didn't care. I wanted her to see she'd pushed me to the edge. I wanted her to know her lies had consequences. That's when I told her I made a decision, something cold, calculated, and definitive. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not anymore. I'd settle this once and for all, and if she thought she could walk out of this without consequences, she was dead wrong. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You're done, pack your things. I want you out of my house by tomorrow, and don't bother trying to explain, you've already said enough." Her face crumpled and she begged, "Please, let's talk." "No," I cut her off sharply. "There's nothing to talk about. You lied, you cheated, and you betrayed everything we built. I want my life back and I'm going to get it." As she stormed out, I felt a strange mixture of relief and rage. She was leaving, and honestly, I didn't care where she went. I just knew I'd never trust her again. That night, I sat alone in our empty house, feeling the weight of everything she'd done, and I realized this was only the beginning. Next, I'd start planning how to ensure she paid for what she'd done, and how I'd come out of this stronger. The morning after she left, I sat in the silence of our house, the emptiness feeling heavier than I expected. Every corner seemed to echo with memories of the woman who'd once filled this space with laughter, love, and promises. Now it was just me and the cold reality of betrayal. I stared at the folder I'd left on the kitchen table, proof of everything, every lie she'd spun during her pregnancy, every late night, every secret message, all laid out like a roadmap to her double life. I knew I had to act fast. The plan was set. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal, the weight of her lies, without causing chaos that could backfire on me. I needed her to understand that I wasn't just angry. I was calculated, precise, and deadly in my way. Revenge? Yes, but it had to be smart. First, I changed the locks, not just the front door, but every entry point. She left her keys behind, thinking she'd come back. I wanted her to realize I wasn't bluffing. Then I called a lawyer, got some advice about the divorce process, her rights, and how to make sure I'd be protected. I wasn't just going to walk away from this. I wanted to win completely and make her regret every step she took. But I knew I couldn't just end things with a legal document. I wanted her to see what she'd lost, what she'd thrown away. So I devised a plan to reveal her secrets in a way that would hit her hard but also keep me in control. I started by creating an anonymous email account. From it, I sent her a message. Nothing too obvious, just enough to make her nervous. I told her I knew everything, about Mark, about the messages, about her secret meetings. I warned her to come back and talk, or else I'd go public. I didn't plan to actually go public, but the fear in her eyes when she read that was priceless. That's what I wanted: control, intimidation, a taste of her own medicine. The second part of my plan was more subtle. I hired a private investigator. I didn't want to just accuse her. I wanted proof that would wipe her excuses away. I told the Pi to follow her, document every move, and find out if she was planning to run or hide. I also asked for copies of any new messages or contacts she made. I wanted to be 2 steps ahead. While I waited for updates, I cleaned out her side of the closet, packed her things, and stored them in the garage. I wanted her to see I was serious. I also set up a camera at the front door, discreet, hidden, so I could watch her reactions if she came back. If she did, I'd be waiting. All the while, I kept a close eye on her social media. I knew she'd try to cover her tracks, but I wanted to see if she slipped up or made any move to contact Mark again. Sure enough, a few days later, I saw a message pop up. It was from her. She was asking to meet. Plain and simple. No shame, no remorse. Just that same reckless attitude she'd had the entire time. That was the moment I realized I couldn't just let her go. I had to take control of the situation. I decided I'd confront her in person, but I'd do it on my terms. I'd lure her back, make her believe she still had some power, then take everything away from her at once. That's when I finally revealed the full extent of my plan. I'd arrange a meeting, lay out all the evidence, and make her face the reality of what she'd done publicly if necessary. I scheduled the meet for that weekend. I told her I wanted to talk, to clear the air, and she responded with a desperate message begging for a chance to explain. I didn't reply. Instead, I prepared everything. I printed out the evidence, laid it on the dining table, and waited. When she arrived, her face was pale, trembling. She pleaded, "Please, I didn't mean for it to get this far." I cut her off coldly. "You lied, you cheated, and you betrayed everything. I have everything right here." I pushed the folder across the table. "That's the proof. You've been caught red-handed." Her eyes widened and she looked like she might faint. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said, voice low and steady. "You thought you could get away with it, but the game's over. You're done. I want you out of my life, and I'll make sure you never forget what you did." She burst into tears, begging for forgiveness, promising she'd change, that it was just a mistake. But I wasn't interested in her excuses anymore. I had already made up my mind. Her tears didn't matter, her pleas didn't matter. What mattered was that she realized she'd lost everything: her marriage, her family, her respect. And in that moment, I finally felt the icy clarity of revenge. It was sweet. It was necessary. It was complete. As she left, crying, I knew I'd never look at her the same way again. She'd chosen her path, and I'd made damn sure she'd remember it forever. Next, I'd start the real fallout, the aftermath of her betrayal and the decisive step that would finally mark the end of this nightmare. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm I had conjured myself. I dropped the bomb, laid out all her secrets on the table, and now I was just waiting for the fallout. It was strange, really, how silence can feel so loud. The house was empty now, her belongings gone, and I spent hours just staring at the walls, replaying everything in my head. Every detail, every lie, every betrayal, it all played on repeat. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't just angry, I was furious. Not just with her, but with myself, for trusting her for so long. I could feel the adrenaline in my veins every time I thought about her. Sneaking around, her lips touching Mark, the way she'd lied to my face during those months. All of it churned inside me, fueling a burning desire for justice, or perhaps just plain revenge. Her absence left a void I didn't know what to do with. I'd always imagined building a future with her, a life filled with shared dreams and promises. But now, that future was a pile of rubble. I felt a cold satisfaction knowing I'd taken the power back, that I'd made her face the consequences of her actions. Still, a part of me wondered, was this really enough? Would she suffer? Would she regret? Or was I just satisfying my ego? One thing was clear: I needed to close this chapter. I couldn't keep living in limbo, waiting for her to come crawling back or to finally admit everything. I decided to take control of the situation and make the final move. It started with informing her family. I called her sister, told her everything about the messages, the meetings, the lies. They were stunned, obviously, but I needed someone on my side, someone who could help keep her accountable. I also sent a carefully worded message to Mark's wife, if only to let her know what kind of man she was married to. Honestly, I didn't care about petty revenge on that front. I just wanted the truth out in the open. But the real game changer came when I went to the lawyer again. I drafted the divorce papers, making sure every detail was airtight. I wanted full custody of the baby, of course. I wanted her to see I wasn't just angry, I was determined. This wasn't just about ending a marriage. It was about justice, about protecting what little dignity I had left. I arranged a meeting with her for that very afternoon. I told her I had one last thing to discuss, more about the divorce, about what was coming next. She was nervous, of course, her face pinched and pale. I could see the fear in her eyes, and honestly, it made me feel alive again. This was her world crumbling, and I was the one holding the wrecking ball. When she arrived, I handed her the papers. Her trembling fingers barely managed to take them. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "This is it. You're done. No more lies, no more secrets. You wanted to play a cruel game, you lose." Her voice shook as she tried to protest. "Please, we can work this out. I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand." I scoffed. "You lied to me during my pregnancy. You betrayed everything we built. I don't want to hear your apologies. Just sign the papers and we'll go our separate ways." She hesitated, tears welling up again, but I saw the flicker of resignation in her eyes. She knew I had everything, proof, control, and the upper hand. With a shaky hand, she signed the document. The ink was thick and dark, sealing her fate. That moment I felt a strange mixture of relief and hollow victory. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. I signed my name and handed her the last page. She looked at me with a mixture of guilt and defeat, and I knew I'd finally closed the door on that chapter. As she left the house later that afternoon, I stood in the doorway, watching her walk away. Her figure blurred as I fought the rising tide of emotions. I had finally done what I set out to do, taken control, exacted justice, and cut her out of my life. That night I sat alone on the sofa, feeling the coolness of the empty house seep into my bones. I reflected on everything, the lies, the betrayal, the loss. But I also knew I was finally free. The pain would fade, but the lessons would stay. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. And in this case, I'd learned the hard way. Never ignore the red flags, no matter how much you want to believe in love. Next, I'll figure out what's next. But for now, I'm done. I've handed over the keys, closed the door, and taken back my peace. And that's all I need, to know I'm finally moving forward without her shadow hanging over me. The house was eerily silent that night, the kind of quiet that presses down on you, making everything feel heavier. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space where her side of the bed used to be. My entire body was tense, muscles clenched from the adrenaline crash after everything was finally over. The weight of her betrayal still lingered in my chest, but somehow I felt lighter, like I'd finally cut free from a terrible burden I'd been carrying for months. The worst part, I kept replaying her face when she signed those divorce papers. It wasn't just guilt, it was a look of complete surrender. She knew she'd lost. That look haunted me, but it also brought a strange sense of closure. I'd taken control, and now I was finally free to rebuild. I spent the rest of the night organizing the chaotic mess of my thoughts. I called a friend, a guy I trusted, to talk things through. I told him everything from the moment I saw her sneaking out to the final signatures. He listened in silence, then finally said, "You did what you had to do, you got your life back." That simple sentence hit me like a punch to the gut. Yeah, I'd done what I had to. I'd fought for myself, for my kid, and for whatever shred of dignity I had left. But I couldn't ignore the lingering questions. What do I do now? How do I move past this betrayal? How do I ever trust again? The answer wasn't clear yet, but I knew I had to focus on healing. Slowly, I started cleaning up the house, throwing away her remaining things, clearing out the space she once filled. I wanted to erase her presence, not out of hatred but out of necessity. I didn't want to carry her ghost any longer. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. I poured myself a strong coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. I stayed in my pajamas all day, doing little things, reading old books, taking long walks outside, trying to reconnect with myself. The sense of self-preservation was strong now. I realized that I'd spent so long trying to keep her happy, to hold things together, that I lost sight of what I needed. It was time to rebuild, not just my house, but me. I also made a list of the things I wanted to change, things I'd neglected while caught up in the chaos. I wanted to get healthier, focus on my career, and spend more time with my kid. The idea of being a single parent was intimidating, but I felt a strange sense of empowerment. I was finally taking care of myself in a way I hadn't done in years. One thing I knew for sure: I wasn't rushing into anything. I needed time to process, to heal, and figure out what kind of life I wanted moving forward. I didn't want to be bitter or angry forever, but I also wouldn't forget what she did. It would stay with me, a reminder to trust my instincts. That evening, I reached out to a few friends, people I knew would keep me grounded. I told them everything, and they listened patiently. Their support was a lifeline, reminding me I wasn't alone. I realized that even after everything, I still had people who cared, who wanted to see me succeed. As I lay in bed that night, I finally allowed myself to breathe deeply. I was exhausted physically and emotionally, but I was also hopeful. It was the end of a chapter, one filled with pain, betrayal, and anger, and I was ready to start a new one. One where I put myself first, where I rebuild trust, but more importantly, trust in myself. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. I know that. But I also know I'm stronger than I thought. And no matter what, I'd never let someone manipulate or betray me again. I'd learned the hard way what red flags look like, and next time I'd listen. For now, all I could do was keep moving forward and trust that eventually peace would find its way back to me. Next, I'll need to decide how I want to handle the future, whether to stay in this city, start fresh somewhere new, or just focus on healing. But one thing's certain: I've taken the first real step, and that in itself feels like victory. Weeks turned into months, and slowly I started piecing my life back together. The house no longer felt like a prison. It became my sanctuary again, a place where I could breathe freely. I moved forward by focusing on the basics, working more, spending time with my kid, and choosing myself over the chaos that once consumed me. The pain of her betrayal still lingered, but it was no longer a storm I was caught in. It became a part of my story, something I learned from, something I wouldn't allow to define me. Getting rid of her belongings was a cold, almost ritualistic process. I handed her key over to the lawyer, then drove to her parents' house, where I dropped off the last of her things. Watching her leave, my life physically was like closing a chapter I'd been desperate to forget. I felt a strange sense of relief, but also a gnawing sadness for the years lost, the trust shattered. Still, I knew one thing: I was better off without her. One afternoon, I took my kid to the park, a small, simple act that reminded me of what truly mattered. As we played, I realized how much I'd been holding back, how much I'd let her betray me and still held onto the hope she'd change. That hope was gone now. What I had instead was clarity. I knew I'd be okay, stronger and wiser. I also made a point to set boundaries. I started seeing a counselor, someone I could vent to without judgment. I learned that healing wasn't about pretending everything was okay. It was about accepting the raw pain, then choosing to move past it. I learned to trust again, but smarter, listening to red flags, not dismissing gut feelings. Looking back, I realize how much I've grown. The betrayal was a brutal lesson, but it forced me to reevaluate what I want in life. No longer will I accept lies or manipulation. No longer will I ignore red flags, even if I desperately want to believe in love. Because now I believe in myself more than ever. I still sometimes catch myself thinking about her, wondering if she ever truly understood what she lost. But I remind myself I am enough. I am capable of creating happiness on my own. I don't need her to define me or to validate my worth. Today, I stand here with a quiet confidence. I've handed in the final papers, changed my locks, and closed that chapter of betrayal. The keys are gone, the house is empty, and I am finally at peace. I have a future to build, one that I control, one that doesn't include lies or broken promises. To anyone reading this and going through something similar, know that you're not alone. Trust your instincts. Don't ignore red flags, no matter how much you want to believe in the best. And most importantly, remember that your worth isn't tied to someone else's betrayal. It's innate, unbreakable, and waiting for you to reclaim it. I've learned that revenge isn't about running someone down or exacting some kind of petty justice. It's about reclaiming your peace, setting your boundaries, and walking away stronger. I've done that. I've taken the keys, handed over the last piece of her, and stepped into a new beginning. And as I finally locked the door on her chapter of my life, I realized something profound. The only person who can truly rebuild your life after betrayal is you. And I'm finally ready to do just that.